The spread of Hellenistic culture. Hellenistic culture, when we think about it, Alexandria, the city in Egypt, is kind of the center point for it. It's a blend of Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Indian culture, which makes sense when you look at where Alexander the Great conquered. They spoke Koine, which is a form of Greek dialect. Trade and cultural diversity in Alexandria. So as I said, Alexandria in Egypt was the center. Why? Because ships were coming in from all over, from the Mediterranean, from the Red Sea, up the Nile, everywhere else. So people were coming in to trade both ideas and goods in Alexandria. There was art all over the city. There were palaces. When Alexander died, his hugely ordained coffin was entombed there. So everything revolved around Alexandria. The museum and library. It was a little bit different than we think of today. It was dedicated to the muses, hence museum, and it had art, kind of like the art museum, a zoo, like Brookfield Zoo, a botanical garden, like Morton Arboretum, and a dining hall, so like the signature room of the Hancock Building. All of those things together would be a museum. So it's got everything you could possibly ever want in one place. In the library, there were 500,000 papyrus scrolls with all kinds of information on them. Here is Alexandria. Somewhat a little bit mythical and kind of out there, but if you look at this, the Pharos, the lighthouse, this has been examined today in modern culture. Back then they believed that the lighthouse could just set ships on fire that tried to invade. Whereas it seems kind of odd when you hear it at first glance, archaeologists and other historians have examined it, and they believe that it is possible that through some type of lens or a series of lenses that they could take light from the sun, magnify it through these lenses, point it back at ships, and then light the wooden decks on fire, which is not totally unfathomable. They've been able to start working with this technology, and it is possible that it could have existed. Science and technology. Astronomy was huge in Hellenistic culture. Aristarchus said the sun was large at the center of the universe. That's revolutionary because, as we know today, the sun is at the center of the universe. Back then, they didn't know that. Ptolemy had a different idea. Remember, that's one of Aristotle's generals. And he said that the earth was at the center, which became the widely accepted view for hundreds of thousands of years. The geometry of Euclid came about during this time. Anyone who's taken geometry, proofs, theorems, things like that, knows that it's still used today. Archimedes was a huge inventor of the time. He invented the pie, the lever, and Archimedes' screw, which was used to draw water up from wells. Instead of having a well where you have a bucket, you could use this screw to propel water to the top. Philosophy and art. Stoicism and Epicureanism are two big ones from Hellenistic culture. Zeno is the man who made Stoicism. He lived from 335 to 263 BC. He said that people should live virtuous lives in harmony with the will of the gods and natural laws. He also said that human desires like power and wealth were dangerous distractions. You should put them away. And if you could live a happy and harmonious life. Epicurus, he said the gods there exist, but they have no interest in human affairs. As in, the gods don't care what we do. And that the only thing that was real was that which could be perceived by the senses. If you can't taste, touch, smell, see, or hear it, it doesn't exist. We know that today it's not true because we see atoms and so on, and other molecules that aren't visible to the human eye but are still there. Back then they did. He said that any virtuous conduct should bring about the absence of pain. So if it's harmful, if it hurts you, you shouldn't do it. They also believed in the harmony of body and mind. Realism in sculpture. So statues to the god were made to honor the gods and heroes originally. Then with realism, it became about that you should portray real people, ordinary people, in everyday situations. Why have this idealized version of things, how they're supposed to be, if no one can attain it? Let's talk about what actually should be. The Colossus of Rhodes, as an example, it was a bronze statue 100 feet high. However, an earthquake in 225 BC brought the statue down. It's one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. When it collapsed, the bronze was then sold for scrap. Another example is Nike, or Winged Victory. It came about in 203 BC. However, by about 150 BC, Hellenistic culture was on the decline, giving rise to Roman culture. And that is the end of chapter 5.